Hello, everybody. We're here again for another session of poetry reading. Since this is not a class in poetry, we don't have any exams, glory be. I'm sure you're thinking that, as am I. But on the other hand, we all might learn a little something about what makes up poetry as we go along. No harm in that. And if some listener feels confused or doesn't get a stanza or an entire poem, who cares? Who cares? You won't be canceled, and perhaps later it will come to you, or the second time around, you'll be able to see in a similar poem, you'll have one of these eureka moments. I know that's happened to me, but mainly we're just here to have fun. Today we're going to have love poems. These are among the most enduring kinds of poems that poets have written, although they are perhaps a little out of style today. I read 2 complete books of poetry this past month in which the poets didn't really seem to love anybody or anything. Yeah, it was kind of sad, actually. Maybe they loved themselves. I guess we'd have to grant them that. Okay, we know some people aren't sure they love their spouses once the honeymoon is over. And that's, of course, one of the early signs of impending divorce. But then some people fall in love all over again, and others start out thinking they are in love, but really don't understand what that means until they've been there for 5 or 10 years. And then all of a sudden, they see the attachment and that myriad threads and knots that tie them together. And then others have to be married more than once before they get it right. I'm in that category. If you go beyond 2 or 3 tries without a winner, well, sometimes the Wheel of Fortune is really not very nice. And beyond 3 times, that's getting into movie stardom. Most people can't afford that, even if they're so inclined. However, there's a lot of lasting love in this world. And where could we start? What choice would we have with love poems? We have to start with Shakespeare, of course, don't we? Sonnet 18 from this old tattered book of mine called the Sonnets of Shakespeare. This book, as you can see from the upper corner, cost 35 cents, so you know how long I've had this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair dream fair sometimes declines. By chance or nature's changing course untrimmed, but thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou art. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growst. So long as man can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Well, I butchered a couple of lines in that poem, but I think the meaning sneaked in spite of me. Then here's another poem about love by John Donne. And this poem is of a metaphysical cast. What does that mean? Well, it simply means that he is argumentative, but at the same time cleverly sincere, putting his love together with odd objects, such as in this one, the common flea. After all, in Donne's time, the flea was a common afflicter of humans, not just dogs and cats. So this poem is called The Flea. Mark but this flea, and mark in this how little that which thou deniest me is. It sucked me first, and now sucks thee, and in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou know'st that this cannot be said a sin, nor shame, no loss of maidenhead, yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two, and this, alas, is more than we would do. Oh, stay, 3 lives in one flea spare, where we almost, yea, more than married are. This flea is you and I. And this our marriage bed and marriage temple is, though parents grudge, and you we're met, and cloistered in these living walls of jet, though use may make you apt to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege, 3 sins in killing 3. Cruel and sudden thou hast since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence. Wherein would this flea guilty be, except in that drop which it sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst, and sayest that thou findest not thyself, nor me, the weaker now. 'Tis true. Then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor, when thou yieldst to me, will waste, as this flea's death took life from thee. Now, the language is a little archaic, but the theme of this poem is very, very clever indeed. He sees a flea that has bitten him, and it's now on his lover. And he says, it sucked blood from me first, and now it's getting some from thee. And in this flea our 2 bloods mingled be. Ah. So then he's going to interpret that in his favor, of course. He says, thou knowest that this cannot be said a sin. It's not a sin to mingle our bloods in a flea, nor shame, nor loss of maidenhood. Yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of 2. The flea has combined both of their bloods now. And this, alas, is more than we would do, he's saying to her. And then she kills the flea. She kills it. And he says, cruel and sudden hast thou since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence? Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that drop which it sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst, and sayest that thou find'st not thyself, nor me the weaker now? He's saying, well, the flea got blood from both of us, but we don't feel any weaker than we did, so what's the big deal? 'Tis true, we are not weaker. Then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor, when thou yieldest to me, will you waste, as this flea's death took life from thee. Well, he's got her there, has he not? Oh yes, that's a love poem, and also a poem of gross seduction. I love John Donne because he is so clever, and if he lived in our time, it's hard telling what he'd get away with. Now I'm going to move forward about 500 or 600 or 700 years to the present time and read you a poem by Roy Beckemeyer. Most of you have heard of him. I've read his poems before, and this is called Stage Whispers, poetry by Roy Beckemeyer, and this one is Blessings, and the epigram is for Pat. And Pat's his wife, you'll be happy to know. Your mother's hair, your father's nose, the bedroom eyes your own, the whispered words that could fill tomes, the hands my hands enclose, the back you turned, but not for long, the tears that stained the floor, the times when I, lost and unmoored, admitted I was wrong, the ways you changed that never seemed to change the one you are, this life foreseen from off so far, we made real from our dreams. Isn't that a beautiful poem? It's a poem about what happens in a successful marriage. So now, let's turn to our final poem. And I don't always, but I love to, of course, read my own poems. And this one's called The Time of Our Lives. This is a poem I wrote for my wife, Marcia, in 2015, and gave it to her enclosed in a card for our wedding anniversary at that time. The Time of Our Lives, and the epigram is Reflections on a Long Marriage. The time of our lives is floating softly on, as if by silent, curious winds thus born. Each blink, each smile, and every stormy sky marks a steady passage. It's not by drama that our show goes on, and can we say that we will be reminded of the day when lost we saw a tiny detail of the art our vision can no longer tease apart. It's not in burning bushes, gods in smoke, or vasty taxes making us go broke, the naming a new coffee or tea, or founding of a colony beyond the sea that we remember coming down this stretch. Think, rather, how we taught the dog to fetch and caught the sunset in a photo sketch. Yes, it's the little things, isn't it, that make our lives go forward from day to day and make our marriages a success from year to year. That's all for this time around. Enjoy and reflect on our upcoming Memorial Day and what it all means. There are sons, husbands, brothers, and best friends buried in far-flung cemeteries today who fought for the lives of plenty and ease which we now have. Thanks unto them all. Let's get together again next week, and perhaps we can read some poetry that has come out of our wars and challenges. I'll see you then. Bye for now.